is the coolest program on earth for all ages. It is so sarcastic and funny. Get it now at the Chess Superstore.
And again, we're very happy to have with us National Master Irina Krush. As you know, Irina is one of the most talented and promising young players, and especially being a young lady, this is even all the more impressive. Welcome to the show, Irina. Your rating has gone up. Your USCF rating now is over 2,300. Your FIDE rating is now, what, over 2,300 as well?
It should be around that, yes, 2,300.
Okay. Yeah, in addition, you've had some very good results lately, like in the New York Open and a number of tournaments that we'll see some games from. So your USCF rating should actually be pushing closer to 2,400 when these results get rated.
That's true.
One of the most active masters and sociable masters in the New York area is Eric Cook. He plays in one tournament after another at the Marshall Chess Club, at the Manhattan Chess Club. So the next game we're going to look at with Irina is where she's black, playing her favorite Sicilian defense, and Eric Cook throws everything after her. So Irina, after e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, knight out, knight c6. So Eric plays one of the sharpest methods here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plays bishop c4.
Sozin. I play queen b6. It's a line that I've recently started to play. It's called the Benko Sozin. And one of the ideas of this move is to avoid the heavily analyzed sharp lines of the Velimirovich attack. Mm-hmm. And revert to regular Sicilian lines.
Well, basically, you force white to do something with this knight, or play bishop e3 and go in for this pawn sacrifice or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, where did he go with the knight?
Knight b3.
Okay. Now, of course, white regains a tempo by playing bishop e3, but more or less just sends your queen to where she wants to go anyway, right?
Yeah.
So now he
bishop d3,
puts his bishop on a protected square. You play bishop e7, white castles. And now white plays f4. So you play a6.
I'm trying to get some activity on the queen side.
So that explains white's a4. And not only does a4 clamp down, but as you explained in your notes, you really don't want to allow white to play a5.
White got control of the b6 square. It'd be very unpleasant for me.
So anyway, so you go ahead and play b6.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not only useful because you stop white from playing a5, but you also have the option of putting your bishop on b7 with nice pressure on the diagonal if you want.
All right.
White plays queen f3. Very straightforward, bringing the queen over to the king side. You play bishop b7 as advertised, right? And now g4.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what runs through your mind when your opponent plays g4?
Well, of course, it's a very aggressive move, and it's really the way white is supposed to play in this variation, you know, try to get some things going on the king side. And so g4 just fits into the plan perfectly.
When I was studying the Najdorf a bit with Walter Brown, he explained to me, anytime your opponent plays g4 in a Sicilian, you always have to be prepared that on g5, what the future is with this knight.
Right.
And in general, you don't like to play knight e8 because it's rather passive, it interferes with the communication. So it's very important to have things coordinated so that you have the d7 square as a rule available for the knight.
I mean, knight d7 also, you know, the knight can transfer over to c5 and it's going to be fine for
Or
black.
either piece can drop back to f8 for defense. So here you play knight b4. Mm-hmm. This opens the diagonal and also keeps an eye on the c2 and the bishop on d3.
Right. Well, white played g5 here, but perhaps, let's say, he would have played f5. I have this breakthrough with d5, and, you know, I open up the center, and it's very good for black.
Mm-hmm. This is very thematic Steinitz principle, right? When your opponent's attacking you on the wing, to blast open the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Eric continued with g5. And now you went knight back to d7. And here he played queen h3. You said he could also play f5 here if he wanted.
Right, f5 is a possibility. Of course, it's not the strongest move in the position, obviously, because I can just take, and because the pawn is pinned, you can't take with that. And after queen takes, I have knight e5, and the knight occupies a very strong position in the center. It's a very powerful knight. It doesn't allow the pieces to drop over to the king side as easily.
It's queen h3.
Mm-hmm. And I go knight c5, creating the threat of knight takes b3 and knight takes d3.
Okay, so he played knight takes c5, which it does stop the threat, but on the other hand, after you play b takes c5, positionally you've gained something here, right?
Yeah, I'm building up my center, and it's okay for black.
He continues full speed ahead here. He plays f5.
Right.
Now, Irina, I must say it takes pretty good nerves, to play this type of position with black. I mean, you got to play something, but...
I mean, if you're a Sicilian player, then you have to get used to playing these kind of positions. And of course, actually, I have to admit, during this game, I almost had a heart attack. It was very nerve-wracking, but I survived.
He takes f4.
Take.
Okay, so he took with the pawn. And now he has threats like pawn to f6 or pawn to g6.
Right, f6 just simply is going to win a piece because of mate on h7. And here I play c4. Now, this was a very good move because here, basically, I force white to charge forward because bishop e2 is out of the question because of knight takes c2, g6, pawn takes, h6. Bishop is going to sacrifice himself, obviously. I take, queen takes, and queen c5 is going to win. Here, my bishop is coming into play, of course.
So instead of him playing queen h7 mate, he actually finds himself checkmated because he's exposed his own king on these diagonals.
Yeah.
But this is very typical of the Sicilian. One move could mean everything.
Yes, tempo is very important. So he doesn't waste any moves, and he just plunges ahead with g6. I play h6 because if I take first on g6, and play h6 here, he has queen e6, king h8, and then a sacrifice on h6. And what happens is if I take the bishop, he wins with g7. King takes g7, queen g6, and queen h7 mate.
That would be bad news.
Yeah, very bad news.
If he takes that bishop, he has g7 check.
Right, which prevents me taking over here because of...
And now he has bishop g7 check or something?
g7. And of course I have to take. And after rook f7, I'm facing a lot of problems here. Minimum he has is perpetual check, and of course I wanted to avoid this variation.
Okay. In the game, you played h6 immediately. And now here, we really have to give Eric his credit here. He played f6, and I have to ask you, is this around the point where you had a heart attack?
Yeah, it was around that point, and of course...
I mean, it really looks like your king side is, really
I
under heavy
seriously
fire.
didn't think I was going to survive this attack, but I didn't have much... I mean, I wasn't going to resign at this point, I was going to play on, so I had to take.
Well, certainly not having been bashful up to this point, Eric went ahead and played rook takes here and threw the...
Right. Now, of course, I can take this rook because of g7, and I'm going to find myself in a mating net here.
Well, here, for example, if you take this, then he can just play queen takes h6, and
Yeah, he doesn't want to be greedy and take the rook when he has mate on h8.
No, you're absolutely in the box here.
Yeah.
Since you can't take the rook, you might as well eliminate one of these bishops that's trying to kill you, right? So you took here. And now here he has two choices of continuing the attack. He can either sack the bishop on h6, which basically you have to consider every single move now, right? Or he can play as he played in the game, rook at a to f1, bringing another rook to bear. So what would you have done if he'd have played bishop takes a pawn on h6?
Bishop takes h6 looks dangerous, but really it's pretty harmless because of pawn takes g6, and after rook takes g6, I play very simply rook f7. There's no need to go into complications here. I just defend my king side. Again, this is going to be a threat, and I'm doing perfectly fine here.
Yeah, but it takes good nerves in the face of all this onslaught just to play a couple of calm, cool defensive moves, kind of like Karpov, if you will, and then realize that in a minute it's going to be your turn to throw in some punches.
Yeah, I knew I had some kind of counterplay that if he wasn't careful that I would get my chance to attack.
Well, in the game he played rook at a to f1, and now how did you defend?
I didn't have much of a choice here. I mean, he was going to take on f7 and sacrifice on h6, leading to mate, so I really wasn't for anything here, and this is my solution. Pawn takes f6.
So he played g7, continuing straight ahead. Queen takes doesn't do much because you just simply play pawn takes and bring your queen over, right?
Right. And actually, rook takes f6 looks very good for white, but here, king g7, exclam, gives black, leads black out of the danger because just attacking the rook and threatening to take on g6 and anything, whatever it takes on.
Well, say he takes there, you take here.
Right.
And then on g7 check, you just run back away with your king?
The problem here is that white just doesn't have any more pieces to attack with. If even they had like one more piece, then it would be over for me. But
he played g7. And now I like what you did here. Again, if you move your rook away, he'll play queen takes h6 and your king is in the box. Well, like you said, tempo is everything, right?
Right, queen c6. Also, here, if I took the pawn, he had queen takes h6, king g8, and king f2. And there's no defense for mate on g1, so I wasn't going to be greedy and take the pawn.
So in the game, you went ahead and lined up your battery with queen c6. And now he has nothing better than taking your rook, right?
Right, so he just regains his rook, but somehow, the more pieces that come off the board, the less dangerous it is for me.
And the key point here is that you take with the king so that your king runs out. So now he took on h6 with a bishop check. And now your king runs up to e7. And here he played rook e1 check. And your king continues to scurry over to the queen side where he has a few more friends, right?
Yes.
So now white finally played c takes his pawn on d3. Otherwise, this could be a serious pawn, right?
And actually, I played knight takes d3 here. I think Eric actually was surprised to see that move, but it's quite obvious he can't take on d3 because of queen g2 mate. And the really strong thing about this is that my knight can bring himself over to e5, defending his king, but posing problems to white's own, so it's very problematic for white.
Okay. Yeah, so the knight can come to e5 defending your king. Also, because the knight covers the f2 square, you have the immediate threat of queen h1 mate, right? So now he finds it necessary to play rook e4. And now by blocking the diagonal, he does actually threaten to take your knight. So your knight came back to e5. And now here he played queen f5. So he's threatening to take the pawn with check, so you went ahead and played king up, just abandoning that pawn. And here he took on f6. And this is probably one of the key moments in the game. I mean, not to say there weren't many key moments already, but by this time it's already moved 31. I guess both of you were kind of short on time at this point, right?
Actually, this was a tournament at the Marshall Chess Club, and the time control was 30 and 90. We just passed the time control the most. The time pressure just passed, and like the moves before where my king was in danger were the critical points because I didn't have a lot of time to calculate everything.
Well, here you have many options, and of course it's an extremely complicated position. In a blitz game, someone would certainly look to play rook g8 check or queen b6 check. Looks very interesting. But actually analyzing after the game with Fritz 5, we actually found that rook e8 is probably just leads to a winning position for black.
Right. One of the threats here is knight d7, attacking the rook and the queen, and also rook e6, posing problems to white's bishop on h6.
And so this rook e8, this would just combine defense with attack, and it would give your king an absolutely safe haven, and then his king would still be exposed.
Yeah.
But in the game, you continue to play very sharply with queen b6 check, and the fight rages on. So here he played bishop e3, and now you slammed him with rook g8 check,
Right.
and he goes king f1, and now you took on b2, and it looks on the surface like white can almost resign here, actually. When I first saw the game, I thought, oh, it's all over now. You're converging on him with the bishop, the rook, the queen, the knight is holding everything back.
Right, all my pieces are centralized, and it turns out that my king is placed a lot more safely than his, so I calculate a variation here where I was sacrificing a piece, but I thought I was completely winning, so I just went ahead with queen takes b2.
So in the game, he found an amazing resource, rook c4 check, which really he has to find, otherwise he simply lost.
Right, and I can't take on c4 because of queen takes queen takes f7, hitting both g8 and c4.
Yeah, the amazing thing about this is he takes both pieces with check.
Yeah. It would have been quite unpleasant.
So in the game, though, you ran away, right? King b8.
And this is what I was talking about, the sack of a piece.
Check. And now he played king. You played king over to a8. And now he has nothing better than taking the knight on e5. So here you played queen a1 check. And he has to play king e2.
Because king f2 just leads to immediate mate on g2.
Right.
So plays king e2.
And here you played rook g2 check.
And now here is a very important position in the game because he, as unbelievable as it may be, he had a defense here with bishop f2. And after queen b2, king d3, queen takes f2. White's king is not in the most desirable position, but this would certainly be better than what he did in the game. And still, you know, he has some resources of his own, like queen e8 check, and then queen...
Or maybe rook d4 to threaten rook check, and then your king is a little exposed. There's not a lot of material left on the board here to work with.
Right.
And if you don't get his king, like say after queen check or something, knight interposes, and if you don't get him, then then the game continues. You know, and if you can't take the knight with the rook because of queen check. You can't take the knight with the rook because of queen check, and if you take with the queen, then there's some counterplay with rook to d8 check. And so you could check, but then it's not clear that you're immediately getting him here. I mean, black seems to be more pleasant for choice, but it's not over. In the game, though, he erred and he played king d3, and probably this was a decisive mistake.
Right. After king d3, everything is more or less forced.
So you continued with queen f1 check?
Right.
And now he discovered to his horror that he loses both the knight and the bishop, right? Because, as you pointed out, if king here...
Then rook.
And he can't continue to run with the king.
The rook on c4 falls.
In this position, he had to play knight e2, and now you took the knight with check. He played king d4. And now he had to interpose the rook. And now rook g4 check. King d3. Queen b1 check.
Rook c2. So rook c2, I was winning with bishop e4. And everything's just hanging.
So in the game, he continued dancing around with his king with king e2. And so you played rook g2 check. And this time he did interpose the bishop because he doesn't have much choice, right?
It's only move.
And now you played queen b2 check. And after king d3, here you played queen takes on f2.
Right. This is the first move in a long time that I haven't done with check. But the thing is, there's nothing to fear here because my queen defends this diagonal, and any check just after king a7, it stops there. So I'm doing quite well here. I just have an extra piece, and the attack, continues. So he just resigned. If you're looking for an inexpensive yet sturdy chess clock for tournaments play, nothing beats the Aradora, and nobody beats the
OnlineChessLessons.net
price. So don't waste any more time. The Aradora is waiting for you.
One of the most exciting events for us this year, Irina, was we had the opportunity to play on the World Wide Web Chess Superstore team with Anatoly Karpov, the world chess champion, on board 1. And I played board 2, and Irina played board 3. And this was an amazing experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course. I was very happy to meet Karpov. It's a big deal for me. Karpov to me is like celebrity or something, like Tom Cruise is for most other girls. So anyway, I was really determined to play some good chess and not be embarrassed to play in front of him.
Well, also, like I wrote in our monthly online magazine, actually, for the two of us, we felt it was great to be on his team and so forth. It was a tremendous honor. But also there was a lot of pressure on us because if we didn't win all our matches, the first thing everyone would look at to see how did Henley do, how did Irina do, right?
So what better way to study chess than to sit back, relax, and watch, listen, and learn how the masters think. Discover the thought processes and competitive spirit of a world champion as Anatoly Karpov guides you through his best games and his selected games of Bobby Fischer. Walter Brown shows you how he won the US Championship 6 times and teaches you how to play the Sicilian. 3-time US champion Lev Albert helps you to understand the Benko Gambit. Proudly presented by America's leading chess video producers,